We have been around for the past 46 years, and the inspiring research and innovation work of one of our best scientists, Dr. Shakuntala Tilsted, headlines the 2021 World Food Prize by our gracious host, the World Food Prize Foundation. You are now part of a 2 billion people audience who has been following and engaging with our science communications and policy advocacy work to put aquatic foods on the table since the launch of our 2030 research innovation strategy on aquatic food systems last year. My name is Tana Lala Pritchard. I'm the Executive Director for Strategy, Innovation and Communications at WorldFish, and I will be moderating today's event, which is essentially a virtual ocean voyage around the globe in 90 minutes. I cannot wait to introduce you to the inspiring list of speakers who are valued partners, supporters, and champions of research and innovation in the aquatic food system space, particularly as the world seeks to rebuild better forward from the COVID-19 pandemic and the clock on meeting the goals of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda is ticking. Our goal is to share with you some success stories from the field about the evidence and the growing potential of aquatic foods to unlock multiple benefits for sustainable development in low and middle income countries, but also to enrich the discourse for sustainable transformation of all food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis, which represents an urgent call to action for different actors across research, policy, and public and private sector investments. I see that there's a number of people joining up today, and those numbers are climbing up very quickly. So while we give others a little more time to log in, please allow me to quickly direct your attention to some housekeeping rules that are showing up on your screens right now. Do make sure to take a few moments to familiarize yourselves with them, although by now I'm guessing we have all become Zoom masters. Great. So before I introduce you to our speakers and panelists, let us warm up with some basic facts on aquatic foods. The digital animation wizards in our team have prepared a short video animation for us today. Let's take a look.
We can't have a healthy planet without well-nourished people consuming diverse and sustainably produced food. At WorldFish, we work with small-scale actors, researchers, and governments towards ensuring a future where the unmatched potential of diverse aquatic foods is sustainably utilised. With research, innovation, policies, and investment in aquatic foods, a sustainable, healthy food system for millions of people could be a reality. From diverse aquatic food systems like the coastal fisheries in Timor-Leste, homestead ponds and wetlands in Bangladesh, to the lakes and rivers of landlocked Zambia, sustainable innovation and management solutions are improving how we catch, grow, harvest, process, market and consume aquatic foods. Aquatic foods are aquatic animals, plants and microorganisms grown in or harvested from water for food or feed, and their synthetic substitutes. For example, finfish like tilapia, shellfish like shrimp, and plants like seaweed. Aquatic foods provide an essential source of protein and micronutrients to the diets of 3.3 billion people and are recognised as a superfood for their nutritional benefits to cognitive development and disease prevention. 800 million people's livelihoods depend on aquatic food systems, especially those in developing countries. The naturally low carbon footprint of aquatic foods adds resilience to communities struck by climate change and makes sustainable aquatic food production a key solution for the future. Currently, among the world's most traded foods, the demand for aquatic foods is increasing. The volume of aquatic food production will reach 204 million tonnes by 2030. Shifting global diets to include more aquatic foods would see transformative improvements for billions of people in developing countries, with improved livelihoods, nutrition, income, and rights for women and young people. Spread the word. Aquatic foods for healthy people and the planet.
Thank you to the team for this quick introduction. So to set the scene for our event today, please allow me to introduce you to Dr. Gareth Johnston, Director General of WorldFish, With more than 25 years of experience in sustainable management of fisheries and aquaculture, including policy development, capacity building, and institutional strengthening, Dr. Johnston is a passionate advocate for cross-disciplinary science and aquatic food systems research. He led the development of the new 2030 World Fish Research Innovation Strategy on aquatic food systems in 1CGIAR and beyond. If you are curious to explore this strategy, you can find the link in the chat box. But for now, over to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Tana, and welcome to all of you that are joining us from around the world. What a really proud and momentous occasion for WorldFish, for our partners, for our funders, and for all the various actors in the aquatic food system sector this week represents. I'm speaking to you from Des Moines in Iowa, from the USSA. I'm home to the World Food Prize Foundation. This is a very special reason why I'm here today, along with many distinguished guests who are gathered from all corners of the globe to celebrate Dr. Shakuntala Tilsted, Global Lead for Nutrition and Public Health at WorldFish, who will be honoured this week with the 2021 World Food Prize. Her groundbreaking scientific work at the intersection of nutrition, fish and aquatic food systems is shaping a new global narrative on increasing the importance of aquatic foods for a sustainable food systems transformation towards healthy and resilient diets. It's also informing the critical priorities for the next 10 to 50 years. The global agriculture research and innovation agenda, the nutrition agenda, and the future of the CGR network and beyond, as we tackle the shared complex challenges of transforming world's food, land, and water system in a climate crisis. This is a much-deserved award for a world-class food systems thinker who challenges us to think differently and critically about the interconnected nature of different food production systems in land and water, about the nutritional value of fish and rich diversity of aquatic foods, about the many opportunities aquatic foods represent as a new frontier for improving nutrition and public health, as well as the health and sustainability of the planet, about why aquatic food systems have been an overlooked part of global food systems in terms of both research and investment. From the research field in Bangladesh, in India, Cambodia, Zambia, Malawi, to name a few, to evidence-based advocacy as world-renowned scientists serving at high-level policy for the UN Food System Summit, the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy. Shakuntala Tilsted remains tireless advocate for continued research and investment in aquatic food systems. Her trailblazing research on nutrition-sensitive approaches to food production and the multiple benefits of diverse aquatic foods for sustainable development are shifting global narratives away from the limiting discourse of feeding a growing population towards that of nourishing billions of people, nations, and the planet. Put simply, her work shows that there can be no sustainable and equitable food system transformation towards healthy and resilient diets without more research and innovation in aquatic foods. Her insights and passion to recognize the full diversity of aquatic foods and engage the diverse peoples, men and women who work in aquatic food sector, have also informed the development of the 2030 World Fish Research and Innovation Strategy on aquatic food systems, which we successfully launched last year. The strategy outlines clear pathways for making aquatic foods an integral part of global efforts to transform food systems and to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The key messages stemming from this strategy and the impressive body of scientific work that Dr. Shakuntala have already resonated with over 2 billion people audience around the globe. That's an amazing number of people tuning into this to these messages. With sustainability and inclusivity at its heart, research and innovation in aquatic foods can unlock multiple wins across many of the Sustainable Development Goals. Firstly, aquatic foods are superfoods in the fight against hunger and malnutrition. diverse animals, plants, microorganisms harvested and farmed from water provide micronutrients and essential fatty acids, and that are crucial for cognitive development, human health, and well-being. They already make up a vital component of healthy diets for over 3 billion people globally, and demand for aquatic foods is set to double by 2050. Secondly, diverse aquatic food systems, including marine and inland fisheries, aquaculture, and related value chains, employ many of the world's most vulnerable people, including women, youth, coastal, and indigenous communities. 1 in every 2 workers in the primary and secondary sector of fisheries and aquaculture are women. They're crucial to the sector and provide labour, innovation, ideas, and entrepreneurship. Thirdly, to many, if not all, land-based food production systems, production of diverse aquatic foods has a significantly lower carbon environmental footprint. On average, the major species produced in aquaculture, such as tilapia and carp, have environmental footprints comparable to poultry, the lowest impact terrestrial meat. The fishing and harvesting and production of small pelagic species like sardines, molla, anchovies, or the harvesting of bivalves and seaweeds, which are micronutrient powerhouses in their own right, has an even lower impact on the environment. Research evidence shows that with inclusive and sustainable management, we can increase the current supply of food from the ocean by 6 times. This would make up more than 2/3 of the animal protein required to meet food and nutrition needs of growing global population. This would help avert some 160 million micronutrient deficiencies and prevent diet-related non-communicable diseases in low and middle-income countries. Aquatic foods are the closest things we have to nature-based solution to the challenge of transforming our current food system to one that is healthier, more sustainable, and more fairly distributed. They are often harvested from waters that are common, not restricted to private ownership. So even the landless poor have access to nutrient-rich aquatic foods. The evidence is mounting, and the potential of aquatic foods for solving key sustainable challenges is finally gaining global traction and recognition. At this year's UN Food System Summit, the summit's eminent science group named aquatic foods as one of the 7 priorities to end hunger and nutrition worldwide and to protect and restore the planet. This year, WellFish and UN Nutrition produced a high-level report on the essential role of aquatic foods for healthy and sustainable diets in many developing countries. As part of the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, our researchers have produced a series of blue policy papers exploring critical ocean solutions related to aquatic food systems that benefit people, nature, and the economy. Our recent research in partnership with the Stockholm Resilience Centre, Stanford University, the EAT Forum, has delivered more evidence on growing role aquatic foods must play in the shift towards healthy, equitable, and sustainable food systems. In the CGI network and beyond, WellFish is uniquely placed as a recognized global thought leader to shape and inform effective delivery of research and innovation in aquatic food systems. We have a rich 46-year history of scientific innovations that have improved the lives of millions of people living in the global south. Our wide network of partners across the public and private sector in the global north and south has enabled us to lay the foundations for an exciting 2030 agenda for research and innovation in aquatic foods as the new frontier of bold food systems transformation. For decades, the Global Agriculture Research Agenda, the CGIAR food aid and nutrition policy have primarily focused on land-based food production systems and hunger and malnutrition solutions related to crops and livestock. The immediate future and the next 50 years must be very different. A sustainable food system transformation will not be possible without due attention and investment given to aquatic food systems alongside crops and livestock. Aquatic foods systems, including fisheries and aquaculture, must be prioritized and placed higher up in the new One CGI agenda, its structure, and the donor funding commitments. Historically, aquatic foods research has represented only 3 to 4% of the total CGI annual budget. Things must change. The world is waking up to the unmatched potential of aquatic foods as the fastest growing food sector globally. The World Food Prize Foundation, among many other influential actors, such as the World Economic Forum, UN Nutrition, the Global Panel on Aquaculture and Food Systems, have embraced the growing body of scientific evidence on aquatic foods. 2021 marks the second time that a WorldFish scientist advancing science and development in this important food system sector is named a World Food Prize laureate. The first time was in 2005 when Dr. Vijay Gupta, another WorldFish scientist known as the prime architect of the Blue Revolution in Asia and around the globe, was recognized for improving the diets and livelihoods over 1 million of the world's most impoverished through research innovations in tilapia and sustainable aquaculture. History is important when one thinks about how to shape the future. This is what today is all about. Part celebration of what we together have accomplished so far, and part reflection on what we must do to shape a new, bold future with research and investment in aquatic foods for healthy people and a sustainable planet. And with that, thank you. I wish everybody a good dialogue today. And back to you, Tana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnston, for this inspiring and uplifting words. We will now shift our attention to our first panel. So we will be hearing from various government representatives on the unique role and potential of aquatic foods for providing access to healthier and sustainable diets. We will also learn directly from them about innovative approaches to public-private partnerships and collaborations to ensure that healthy, safe, nutritious fish and other aquatic foods are affordable, accessible, and socially and environmentally responsible. So let us get started with Madame Anu Garg, the Principal Secretary of the Department of Women and Child Development and the Department of Water Resources with the Government of Odisha in India. Anu plays a central role in the governance of food, nutrition, and livelihood security policies at the Department of Women and Child Development in the state of Odisha. Her leadership has brought success in combating malnutrition among women and children through nutrition-sensitive food approaches. Thank you for joining us today, Madame Anu. The virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Tana, and greetings to my fellow panelists and all of you present here from Orissa, India. And I will be presenting a pilot that we have done for fish-based nutrition for women and children in Orissa. Next, please. And I would really heartily like to congratulate Dr. Shakuntala Thilsted for this honor. So friends, in Orissa, we have a problem of undernutrition, and it is a huge priority for the government. We have 4.24 million children who are below 6 and pregnant nursing women. And we have this program called the Supplementary Nutrition Program, where we give hot cooked meals to the children on a daily basis and take home ration to the pregnant women, nursing women, and children under 3. So what we actually give them traditionally is lentils and rice, which they are used to eating, and also 1 egg, which we give 5 times a week for the children and 3 times to the pregnant women. Apart from that, the take-home ration also has a ready-to-eat mix that we make ourselves through our local women cooperatives, and that consists of wheat and pulse, etc. As per some dietary allowances which we have fixed. And this is something that is a huge program across the country, and our state also has it. Next, please. The approach which we have towards nutrition. So apart from this integrated child development service, which I mentioned, where we give food to the children, we have a state strategy also, a specific state strategy, where we are focusing on the hard to reach areas, the difficult, where the problem is more acute. So we are kind of zeroing in on those areas where the problem of malnutrition, undernutrition is more acute. We are trying to focus on children who have severe acute malnutrition. We are focusing on dietary diversity. So apart from egg, we also give vegetables. We are insisting that they squeeze a little bit of lemon in it. We also try to use locally grown material like millets. And now I will be moving to the fish also. And then we are focusing on hard to reach areas, adolescent girls, since they will eventually be mothers and otherwise also to be strong adolescent girls. We are also focusing on them, apart from having an IEC campaign, so that supplementary nutrition as well as complementary nutrition at the age of 6 months starts. Next, please. So now I'll come to fish-based nutrition, which we started as a pilot. So this picture is of our Chief Minister of Orissa, who launched the strategy for us, which also includes, as a measure of dietary diversity and for including micronutrients, fish-based nutrition, which we have started as a pilot. And this is basically to show you that there is political will to start this campaign. Next, please. I will not be going into what are the benefits of fish that I think everybody knows: minerals, essential fatty acids, vitamins. But what I'm trying to show through this slide is that 95% of the people in Orissa consume fish. That means it is a very, very culturally acceptable item of food. Per capita consumption is 16 kgs per year. Fish is abundantly available. Orissa is a coastal state. We have a huge coastal line. So fish is in abundance. We are the 4th largest fish producing state in the country. And so for us, it was something which is acceptable to the people, something which is culturally appropriate. And that is why we thought that we should go ahead and introduce it, at least try to see what would be the issues if we introduce it in a government program for supplementary nutrition for women, children, and adolescent girls. Next, please. As in the beginning, what we did was that we actually went as a group of bureaucrats. So this was basically bureaucratic buy-in into the program. We went to World Fish, headquarters, where we met with Dr. Johnston and his team. We went to other countries where fish is a very important part of government food programs. And that is how we also developed our ideas. Next, please. And this is when we signed the MOU with World Fish. The idea was to have a technical partner who would help us in devising the guidelines, in doing the baseline surveys, and doing the endline surveys, in monitoring that whatever is going on is as it should be. Next, please. So what we essentially did in this pilot is that we have something called the Anganwadi Center, which is like a village courtyard where a local lady and all the local children come here from the age of 3 to 6 years, all the adolescent girls, the pregnant mothers, nursing mothers, and they are given hot cooked meal, and to whom we give dry ration. They are given dry ration or ready to eat or everything. So it's like a focal point for women and children and nutrition in the village. So we took 50 such centers, each with roughly 30 to 40 children and some adolescent girls and some pregnant mothers. So roughly you can say 50 per center. So we piloted fish-based nutrition. So earlier, as I told you, we were giving egg-based nutrition, which we continued. But in these centers, we also started with some fish-based nutrition. I'll show you how. And the second thing was that we used our women self-help groups, a group of 10 to 12 women from the village and they were given hygienic solar dryers from industries department of the state. And the anchovies from the local coastline were brought, dried, and then they were given to the children. They will be given. And simultaneously, Orissa has this very good policy where the local tanks, the local government tanks, are first offered to the women self-help groups. In case they don't come up, then they are auctioned to other people on a commercial basis. So lots of women self-help groups, almost 6,000, have taken over the tanks and are now doing polyculture in freshwater tanks. So what I'm trying to show is that we took up activities, if I go 3, 2, 1, to improve the availability, to improve the access, and finally to improve the consumption of small fish. Next, please. This is just to show you a picture. These are my children who are sitting in the Anganwadi center. The lady is giving them fish-based nutrition. And this is a tribal district in our state. And on the right, to my right, is a nursing mother with a small baby who has been given dried fish. The other children, we are giving a kind of a powder so that it doesn't stick in their neck. Next, please. In their throats. So the idea of this pilot was to improve dietary diversity and micronutrient intake for the women and children, but also to test the acceptability of dry fish products, whether children would like the taste, how easy it is going to be, how the Anganwadi workers will take to it. And we were hoping that we will be able to ensure that the micronutrient intake increases. So I will now be telling you what were some of our challenges. Next, please. So what we do is that this pilot is for 1,200 children and 800 pregnant nursing mothers and adolescent girls, where we are giving dried fish in a packet to the mothers, adolescent girls, and nursing women, and as this kind of a powder to the smaller children. Next, please. This is to show you the solar dryer. These solar dryers have been given to the women, self-help groups, and this is how they are trying to do the drying of the fish, locally procured fish. Next, please. And this is fish farming, which I mentioned in my earlier slide, by women self-help groups. More than 60,000 women have started this. They are getting additional income, also nutritional gains, because since they themselves produce it, they also take some home, they give it to themselves, to their children, to their families. And apart from that, they are also using it as some kind of additional income. Next, please. Now, in this project and in this pilot, we had to have a lot of convergence. So amongst the government departments only, apart from my department, there was fisheries department, there was Panchayati Raj department, which is the local grassroots governance department, the industries department. And then there were these institutes like MS Swaminath Research Foundation is doing our endline and baseline surveys. Then private sector also is going to be linked. Next, please. But there were a lot of challenges. So I must be very candid. First challenge was just production of dry fish in a very, very hygienic manner. We were going to give it to our children, and we cannot afford to give them anything short of good hygienic dried fish. Second was that initially the supply chain, we were procuring from outside the state because, as I told you, the hygienic production was critical. But now that we have trained them and we have given them solar dryers, we will be using the locally procured, locally produced dry fish. The acceptance of taste of the fish powder was a very big issue. And the small children initially, when we were giving, we realized later that we were giving them too much. When we reduced the quantity in the curry, which they were anyway being given, we found that they started eating. When it was a little too much, at that time, they were not liking the taste. And then we started counseling everybody on consumption of dried small fish. In fact, we have made a small recipe book using the local recipes which were being used. Another very major challenge which everybody faced, of course, was COVID, because all these centers had to be closed, just like the schools, and because of COVID. And so there was no hot cooked meal that was given. Rather, we were giving the powder to the mothers, not really sure whether they were then putting it in the meal of the child. But from whatever we gathered from them, yes, they were. Apart from that, we were also getting cyclones and some kind of adverse events, which made things a little difficult in the field. Next, please. But having said that, I must say that I can't right now tell you what were the final results because the endline survey is still being done. But prima facie, what we are told in the field by the people is that they love the fish. They feel that it has helped them. The children are accepting it. The adolescent girls are loving it. The pregnant ladies are loving it. They are also trying to make all kinds of recipes to eat it. So some of the lessons I feel are that if there is political will, if there is bureaucratic support, then these type of initiatives can be grounded. But what is really critical is interdepartmental convergence, as I mentioned. Then technical inputs. You do need support of some kind of an expert organization. So in our case, it was World Fish, and I would like to thank them for that. And then partnership with national research institutes, as I mentioned earlier, for all kinds of studies. And then finally, involving women in the livelihood support, etc. So with that, I would like to thank all of you, and over to you, Tana.
Thank you so much, Anu, for this wonderful presentation. And what a great way for the state of Odisha to really sort of power through and boost nutrition and public health in communities, particularly women and children, with fish and aquatic food. So I will be coming back to you with some questions, but in the interest of time, we will move on to other presentations. I encourage all of our participants to the event today to share questions and comments in the Q&A panel. And I also encourage our speakers and panelists to respond and interact with our audience directly through that panel as well. So I'm going to go over to BP Gyoze, who's the Senior Officer and Advisor to the CEO at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. BP's work focuses on integrating and mainstreaming nutrition into agriculture and related policy and development agenda. Her work also promotes a multi-sector approach for addressing all forms of malnutrition, especially among children. Thank you for joining us today, BP, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Tana, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is a real pleasure for me to be joining this high-level panel and event that is promoting aquatic foods. I am supposed to be speaking on linking aquatic foods in development policy, but also looking at the role of women as well as the youth in aquatic foods. Let me just start by saying, up front, I would like to pose a question. Are there robust policies that are existent and are up to date and are really addressing the current issues of the high levels of malnutrition in all its forms? The simple answer is no. There has not been enough done around ensuring that there are policies that are really looking at how we have an integrated production system, because traditionally, as the first speaker said, he did mention that the CG system has been focusing more around arable farming and not really looking at other forms of agriculture production and inclusion for diversity in our policies. So we still do need to come up and to retool or to rethink our policies around aquaculture and aquatic foods in all its different forms, be it marine, be it inland, or be it artisanal, which is where the women really come in. So the policies are not coherent. They are clearly not delivering on the intended outcomes and impact at individual level, at a national level, and really at developmental level. So there is still a lot of work to be done in this area, particularly, as the previous speaker just said, when we look at what COVID has shown us, the cracks in the system are really about how do we fill these gaps and how do we consciously come up with a system that is coherent, a system that is very pragmatic, and policies that are really speaking to the challenges on the ground. And it is very exciting to notice that aquatic foods are taking center stage. Finally, I think this is long overdue. We should have been thinking about this as technical people, as policymakers, and as program implementers to look at, what we can do different and what we can do better. Let me give an example. At the level of the AUDA NEPAD, we do have a blue economy framework and a strategy around fisheries governance and programming thereof. So since then, we have actually seen that more and more countries are engaging in rethinking their policies and implementation thereof. So now, the other speakers have already mentioned why fish, is important and why we need integrated policies. 5 points. First, fish is about food and nutrition and the quality. Secondly, fish is about trade at local, regional, and international global level. Fish is about people's livelihood, especially for the poor. And fish is about development in all its totality. And more importantly, fish, as the previous speaker said, is really about culture and seeing how we can infuse the new innovations with traditional and indigenous, food systems, so that we really get the fish and the aquatic foods, in the center of what we need to be doing. But what is more interesting for me is the whole notion of how much contribution fish actually has to the GDP. For instance, in Africa, the total annual contribution of fish and aquatic foods is about 6%. That's significant, but we can improve on that. So now, let me just quickly turn to the challenges. Fish is aquatic foods are very perishable, so we need better processing, better value chains, and more importantly, better food safety and handling. There is still a lot of research to be done around the value of fish in its different formats and how we can integrate the different policies and really infuse what we are doing across the different sectors. So research but there are opportunities in this space, training and capacity building, that has to be done. And then advocacy, are we doing enough around advocacy? At the level of the AU and FAO, we actually have a parliamentary forum that is looking at food and nutrition. And we have actually sought to educate them around different aspects of the food system, including aquatic foods. 10 million people in Africa are relying on aquatic foods today, so more can be done. When I was in Zanzibar and Mozambique, I was really fascinated by how the women have actually taken on, the seaweed. So we must be looking at how do we ensure that the women are benefiting from a policy perspective. So what are my key takeaways? One of the key takeaways is that indeed, fish powders are being included in children's foods, in children's meals, in different forms, whether it's powders, pilchards. And then at the level of the school feeding program, we have begun to make sure that aquatic foods form part of the homegrown school meals, which I think is a very good move moving forward. But what remains key here is implementation, monitoring, and accountability. And I was just in Spain a couple of weeks ago at the FAO Fish and Kongshima event. That really showed us that partnerships are very important. And really looking at North-South and South-South coordination is important. Issues like overfishing came up. And then last but not least, how do we ensure that really in our policies, there is diversity and that we start really looking at fish for everybody, for poor people, to improve all different forms of malnutrition, and for our policymakers to start taking fish and aquatic foods very seriously. I thank you, and over to you, Tana.
Thank you so much, Bibi. I see why Shakuntala thinks you're such a great fan and champion of aquatic foods, and you've definitely given us a lot of fish for thought with so many sort of ideas about, and entry points in terms of the key interventions that we need to make in really sort of putting aquatic foods front and center of the sort of nutrition and public health agenda. So, but just a quick question to you. You mentioned obviously the role of women and young people. How important is their participation in sort of aquatic food systems in terms of really shaping the desired outcomes in a more sort of equitable and inclusive way, in your experience?
This is a great question, and this is something that we really have been trying as the African Union and FAO to make sure that women are not left behind, because usually what happens is this, that as soon as a product becomes more profitable, more valuable, men sort of take over. So how do we make sure that we preserve the space and the voice of women and young people? And as one young, lady said, we were at a meeting in Rwanda, she said, we need to start making agriculture and related subjects more sexy so that young people engage and they benefit from it and they can grow. Thank you.
Yeah. And I really also like the point that you made earlier about the role of sort of communication and advocacy in sort of raising the visibility of the sector and also the people that are employed and benefit by it. But a quick question, I guess, to Anu, since, she's obviously one of those women champions who's actually working with lots of women and children in the sector and sort of using aquatic foods and prioritizing aquatic foods in the government's policies for nutrition and health. So what, would be your advice, Anu, for others who may want to replicate the model of success from the work and the programs that you've been working on in Odisha?
Okay. So I would feel that in case people feel it is culturally appropriate, we should not force anything onto anybody. But in case fish is something which people are used to and they have been eating, then one must take it up and convince people, ask them to participate in these recipe competitions, ask women to locally procure. There's no point in getting fish from outside and then asking them to make it. If it is locally available, they can then make some kind of make dried fish, give it to people. So I think what is really going to be required is a little bit of political will, a lot more of buy-in from policymakers, and then as I mentioned, some kind of a technical group initially to help in making the guidelines, the SOPs, and then take it forward.
Thank you so much, Anu. I'm sure the audience also has a lot of questions for both of you, and so please do engage with them through the Q&A panel and sort of help respond to some of the comments that are coming up. We will now move to the second panel, which is the second part of this dialogue. There are a grouping of high-level decision makers that can hopefully share with us some of their ideas and insights about the support that they've sort of given to the aquatic food systems agenda, but also some of the things that we can do in terms of convincing, let's say, others to join along. So let us first start with Rob Burtrap, who is the chief scientist at the USAID Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. Rob serves as the key advisor on a range of technical and programmatic issues to advance global food and nutrition security at USAID. He also leads evidence-based efforts to advance research, technology, and implementation in support of the Feed the Future initiative. Welcome to the panel, Rob. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tana. And what a great group of speakers we've had this morning. I've really enjoyed it. And like others, I'm so excited to be part of this week's events honoring Dr. Shakuntala Tilsted, whom I've worked with for almost 30 years. It really very, very gratifying. So thinking about where we are right now and trying to put a donor perspective on it, 2021, it's the first year of our decade to reaching the SDGs in 2030. So we're really, we've got a race here. We know we're behind. COVID means we have to run even faster. And I think as an American and from USAID, it's been really gratifying to see President Biden at UNGA talk about a global commitment as well as a domestic one. And then Secretary Vilsack and Administrator Power from USAID both made the same commitment at the Food Systems Summit. And so it's a very gratifying moment, and I think we have to seize it. So in our work, we're seeing some emerging priorities. One of them is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. A second one is a focus on enhanced diet quality. And the third one is meeting the challenge of climate change, which we are really terming a climate crisis at this point. So I want to say a bit about each of those and how they relate to aquatic foods. If we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what is more foundational than a child's nutrition to get him or her started off on a good life? I mean, that is the foundation of equity in my view. Also, we've had a strong focus on extreme poverty reduction. So this is another area where we can really see how the lives of poor people are improved by the work of World Fish and its partners in aquatic foods. Then diet quality. Obviously, we've heard a lot about this already this morning. The thing that I'd like to add to the discussion is the focus on affordability. We've heard about the wonderful micronutrient powerhouses that these foods represent, but we need to make them affordable so that poor people, whether they live in urban areas or rural areas, wet areas or dry areas, can afford to buy them. And then with respect to climate change, Gareth's already covered this very nicely, but aquatic foods are the ultimate win-win for those of us in the food and agriculture and land and water management communities because of their low environmental footprint and sustainable aspects. And the CGIAR, in the one CGIAR that we're developing, we need to play that strong suit that where we can put food and aquaculture and agriculture and nutrition in the same lens with environment and biodiversity and climate change. And that what better place to start with our strongest suit, which is probably aquatic foods. Then next, I want to say a bit about the context we're in. Food systems. We've all been watching the summit. It's a compelling concept. It's also a very complex and somewhat messy construct. So we need to discern the pathways by which we can keep a focus on poverty, undernutrition, sustainability, and have our research target those pathways. So this is again where I think affordability will drive demand. And that's linked to inclusive growth in production and value chains and market systems. And productivity gains are key. Now, I don't mean just fish yields or seaweed yields. I mean resource use efficiency. I mean women's labor or men's labor savings. I mean reduced post-harvest losses, value addition, market efficiency gains. All of these will contribute to making these high quality superfoods, I think somebody called them, more available and affordable to the people who need them most. So the one CGIAR that we're in the midst of right now developing is a huge opportunity to get this right. We need a robust research program in aquatic foods. It puts those three things around food, agriculture and food, and management of land and water by people for food, environment and biodiversity, and climate change. And it's the win we need. We need them in crops and livestock too, but this is a great place to start. So implications for research. I think, as in all the work of the one CGIAR, a focus and prioritization. So that's what I think we're going to be very excited about. And if we get this right, it means expanded and enhanced partnerships with global science partners, with NARS, as we've heard today, and with the private sector. So I think what we then need to think about is those research outputs delivering and going to impact at scale. Productivity gains drive, in that broad way I described them, drives investment, both in ponds, in coastal areas, in open waters, but also in markets and processing and all the things that make a food system work. And then trade. And that's especially the trade to local and regional markets. I think and I know Africa, that's a huge opportunity. And we see this small medium enterprise development as a real sweet spot for getting inclusive growth and bringing in technical changes around diversification, polyculture, South-South learning. What a great opportunity we have for lessons to go across the regions that we've been hearing from this morning. And I think last comment for us is that this then opens up the opportunity for our USAID missions in partner countries like Bangladesh to come in and be great partners in helping drive that impact at scale through a private sector led, but also supported by the research and technological development communities to really make this sector thrive. So I'll stop there, but thank you so much, and back to you, Tana.
Thank you so much, Rob, for this, wonderful sort of overview of those sort of key points, I think, and priorities for USAID. I mean, you've always been a staunch supporter of aquatic foods and research innovation in sort of fish and aquatic food systems. Is also like many of the projects that we've sort of worked on together do also contribute to the Feed the Future initiative. And it's just always so encouraging to hear from enlightened donors and funders like yourself, who basically have adopted and kind of embraced aquatic foods early on in the piece and can help bring others along. So speaking of, and I'm sure I'm going to come back to you with some questions, as I'm sure there will be some from the audience as well. But speaking of enlightened and very supportive donors, I would like to invite next Laura Briggs, who is the Deputy Director of Strategy Planning and Management for Agricultural Development at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Laura oversees the Agriculture Development Program strategy and operations functions at the foundation. In her capacity, she also manages cross-cutting portfolios, including women's empowerment, nutritious food systems, and monitoring and evaluation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tana, and it's such a pleasure to be here. Congratulations again. I'm sure Shakuntala is getting quite a few congratulations all this week, but it's just such an honor to be here, and I'm thrilled with the attention that this award is actually bringing to such an important issue related to aquatic foods. And it's also a pleasure to come after Rob. I think we certainly at the Gates Foundation have not invested for as long as USAID has in aquatic foods. But we have made our first investment over the past couple of years and are really excited about the opportunities that this sector presents. So in that spirit, I just wanted to touch on a few things that have kind of informed our decisions around investments in this area. I think touch on a few things that folks have already mentioned, but then also think about how we can ensure that aquatic foods become increasingly central to both research and implementation for global nutrition, for climate change, and for all the SDGs that we've been talking about today. So I think for us, as many speakers have already noted, aquatic foods represent a very rare sort of win-win-win approach. We think of the pathways from agriculture nutrition in sort of three ways. One is around what's being grown on a farm, the sort of own production from an individual farmer or farming family. One around opportunities to increase income, and then of course, women's empowerment. And so from that perspective, aquatic foods meets all three, a very nutritious commodity that can be consumed and grown. One that has a lot of potential for income gains, and certainly one where women are at the center of the value chain. And so it's really rare to have those kind of interventions that actually meet all three of those goals. And so that's been, I think, again, stressed by many other presenters already, but just to note, I think this is a really fundamental point that we need to continue to stress as we look to scale up the work. Just providing some perspective, we've heard some of the amazing work already that in Odisha and in other places. I think there's a lot that we actually already know. And as we continue to, and I'll get to the sort of research side in a moment, but we need to continue to scale up what we know and do so rapidly. I think there are many things that World Fish and other organizations have proven work, have proven to achieve nutrition outcomes as well as income gains, things like integrated homestead food and aquaculture production. So we need to work as a community on scaling up what we know works and do it quickly. I think, would love to see opportunities for many of these programs to be part of countries' financing packages for climate adaptation and resilience. This is where we see overwhelmingly the amount of global finance going is in this sector. And it feels like aquatic foods should be really central to some of those financing packages. Another thing I would note is just, we're certainly, we have a lot of data that we look at that is from the past. And I think we are looking into an increasingly volatile environment and projecting for the future and designing policy, to BB's really excellent point on what the specific policies are, designing policies for a future that is much more volatile and unpredictable than the past. We know that aquatic foods are growing drastically in demand, as Gareth has already mentioned. And we also know that the sector is going to be really volatile with climate change. So I think it would be fantastic to see broader use of foresighting and modeling to help country governments prioritize their limited resources on things that are like aquatic foods that are going to have a big impact on diets and livelihoods. I think those projections will be really helpful in designing the food system that we want for the future. And I'll just a note on this, which I know is not news to many of you in the CG who work on livestock and aquatic foods, is that, too often, I think those modeling tools that are used in climate change are entirely focused on crops. And I think we all as a global community could do a world of difference by insisting that animal source foods are a fundamental component of all of these projections moving forward. I said I would come back to research. I think, a key thing here is continuing kind of the cutting edge research and also increasing the speed at which innovations reach small scale farmers and make it into policy. So there are a couple of things that really stood out to me actually from the first presentation, where we've got some fantastic innovations on things like fish powder, fish chutney, solar drying. Those, again, I think have been proven in terms of impact, but what are the sustainable and scalable business models? And can we invest in understanding what those business models look like and scale them up as quickly as possible? The other thing, and I think BB touched on this too, it like many other challenges to other value chains, we have a real waste problem. 35% of global harvest from fisheries and aquaculture is wasted. There are certainly opportunities for storage technology, new digital technologies to help with this. And that seems to be, would love to see that be a really concerted effort for research moving forward. Rob has already touched on some of the genetic innovations to increase feed efficiency and overall productivity, which I think will be really important. And lastly, as has also been touched on, the climate impacts. And I think, in many ways, I think we're hearing more and more that COVID was a dress rehearsal for climate change. And it does strike me that the international and cross-border collaboration that is required to scale up aquatic foods is pretty unique vis-a-vis the rest of agriculture. And so it would be fantastic from a policy standpoint to really understand what's needed in terms of international and cross-border collaboration. And that's one of the things that obviously I think COVID has taught us quite a few lessons about that we would like not to repeat. And so if we could really understand that collaboration that's needed, I think it will really help in ensuring that aquatic foods is central to these investments that we make moving forward. The good news is many of these areas I just touched on are absolutely part of World Fish's existing research. And part of the research agenda that I know has been shared. And we've seen many of these things underway already in India and Bangladesh and Malawi and Nigeria and other places. So I'm just thrilled to be here today and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think you've highlighted so many issues that I'm sure we would spend the whole day unpacking even further. But I totally agree with you. I think so many of the solutions are already out there. And so, how we sort of scale and how we take, that research evidence and sort of innovative technologies to scale is absolutely critical. And I think this is where funders like, the Gates Foundation and others across the public and private sector have an incredibly very important role to play in helping research institutions and research partners accomplish those goals. So I'm sure there will be questions as well for you, but for now, let me move over to our final speaker for this panel, who is Dr. Joyce Njoro, the IFAD's lead technical specialist for nutrition. Dr. Joyce leads efforts to mainstream nutrition in IFAD's operations and non-lending activities such as policy engagement, capacity building, and knowledge management. She also works in multi-sectoral nutrition governance, rural development, and community-based approaches. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Joyce, and then over to you.
Thank you so much, Tana, for this opportunity. And it's really an honor for me to be here with all these distinguished panelists. And also take this opportunity to congratulate Shakuntala. And indeed, the prize has really also put aquaculture and also fisheries at the forefront. And especially now with the food systems, it is now something that we need to be speaking more about. So today, I'll be talking about ensuring perspectives from low and middle income countries that are central to key nutrition and public health issues, and solutions include aquatic foods. And I'm going to give you this in the perspective of the International Fund for Agricultural Development. I know a lot has been said by the previous speakers, and I'll try and complement what they have said from the perspective of the International Fund of Agricultural Development. So if IFAD sees aquatic foods as an important constituent of dietary diversity, as well as improvement of livelihoods and health of the IFAD's target groups. So the IFAD targets smallholder producers. So that is the main target group. But then the impacts on nutrition go beyond, because when the products are sold in markets, then they are consumed by those beyond the target group themselves. And the small-scale fisheries and aquaculture sector is important to meet food and nutrition needs of the poor rural communities around coastal areas, inland water bodies, and in small islands developing states. And over the past decade, about 5 to 8% per annum of IFAD's programs of loans and grants resources have supported activities related to aquatic food sector. And currently, this would be around 35 investment projects globally. And this is increasing, and there is increasing interest, especially by the IFAD member states, to invest resources in aquatic food sectors, with small-scale aquaculture attracting more resources. And the programs do integrate climate change, environment, gender, youth issues, and also contribute to better nutrition outcomes. So how does IFAD aim to improve the nutrition or to ensure nutrition outcomes from these investments? Like the previous speaker has just mentioned, there are several pathways that we look to optimize. And one of the pathways is increasing production for own consumption. Another one is also improving data diversity for fishing and fish farming communities and surrounding communities, and extending it to the national level. So it's beyond the community, like I've just mentioned. Also increasing incomes, especially for women and the youth, enabling them to afford other nutritious food and services. And we know once you have money, it's not only food, but then you can also access healthcare and other services that also improve the nutrition of the young children and the women. The other perspective is to enhance the resilience of coastal communities against climate change and other shocks. And also this would include ensuring sustainability of aquatic foods by conserving habitats such as mangroves and coral reefs. Another perspective is enhancing knowledge on aquatic foods and nutrition, and also reducing food losses and food waste, which has also come up as a key problem, and strengthening policies and institutions for sustainable aquatic foods, tenure and also access rights for the local people. And like others have said, we have learned a lot also from the COVID-19, which has also brought up the importance of and the role of aquatic foods in the rural areas, especially when the global and local food chains failed. So many coastal communities turn to their local fisheries resources as the main source of subsistence at the peak of the pandemic. And IFAD also responded with financial packages to address the impacts of the pandemic on food security and nutrition of the poor rural communities, and to build their resilience reduce post-harvest losses and food wastes, strengthening market linkages. And over the years, we've learned a number of lessons and also some good practices that also would like to share with you on how to optimize the nutritional impacts. And one of them is partnership and local ownership. IFAD works through governments in the design and implementation of country strategies and projects, including policy dialogue as an integral part of the programs. So an important part of delivering impact are the partnership that IFAD has with other UN agencies, governments, development agencies, academia, research centers, the private sector, and other non-state actors such as the civil society organizations, including the indigenous peoples and farmers and farmers organizations. And we see these also, the partnership between IFAD and World Fish has been there for a long time. And I think it has really brought about ensuring that also we use the evidence generated from the research to inform the investment projects that IFAD is funding. Then the other important lesson is targeting the most vulnerable groups. And IFAD programs focus on rural areas where most of the small-scale producers are based. Small-scale producers account for nearly 90% of the workforce in aquatic sectors. And the number of young people has increased substantially, and looking for new opportunities in the sector across all sections of the value chains. So this is one important aspect. So when you target the most vulnerable, then you can also address their nutritional needs. And as we talk about the most vulnerable, I think focusing on women and women-based value chains, or seeing where to integrate women along the different segments of the value chains, is core to ensuring that they benefit from this aquatic sector. And where we are seeing is that most women will be mostly concentrated in post-harvest areas, processing, marketing of artisanal fisheries, value chains in developing countries. And these often are not given much attention, and post-harvest losses are quite high. And this could be almost 30 to 40%. So investment in cold storage, ice production, rural roads infrastructure, information networks, organizing traders can make much difference to women livelihoods in rural areas. And this should also pay attention to social cultural issues as well, which impede the opportunities of integrating women into these value chains. Another important aspect is access to markets and rural infrastructure. Small producers in rural areas suffer from various weaknesses in the marketing system. That could be the pricing system, weak standards, poor connectivity, distribution systems, information systems, weak producer organizations, among other factors. So post-harvest losses are a major issue in aquatic foods, like I've just mentioned. So it is important to analyze the causes of market failures and address them in development interventions. So IFAD programs commonly make provision for strengthening market linkages, producer organizations, and building the relevant infrastructure to improve access to markets. Another important factor is labor-saving technologies. As we know, rural producers, and especially women, spend many hours on manual jobs. Investments in the right labor-saving technologies can save time for them to do other things, including care practices and even taking care of themselves and their health. And this may include mechanized food processing, solar water pumps, rain harvesters, solar dryers that we've just heard from our colleagues from Bangladesh, among other technologies. Then another important factor that has also been mentioned by all the speakers is addressing resilience and climate change. And climate change impacts are increasingly felt across the aquatic food system, and they are affecting the results of the investments. In recent years, there have been extreme climate events causing serious destruction in aquatic systems. For instance, the recent cyclones in Mozambique and typhoons in India and Nicaragua, which caused significant destruction and loss of lives. So IFAD programs have a strong focus on resilience and climate adaptation, and make sure that these considerations are addressed and the proper adaptation mechanisms are put in place for all the programs. Finally, I just want to close by just sharing with you one or two examples of real investments and what is happening with these investments. So I'm going to share with you that one of the ongoing projects in Eritrea is known as the Fisheries Resources Management Program. And this project contributes to household incomes, nutrition, and building resilience of coastal communities in a very challenging environment. And among its activities, the project is contributing in the rehabilitation and protection of about 1,500 hectares of mangrove forests, which has a positive effect of sustainability of fisheries, resources, and diversification of livelihoods, including production of honey. In addition, the project is supporting inland communities with the means to raise fish, and for the first time in dams spread across the country. So this has enabled inland communities who traditionally did not eat fish to diversify their diets, incorporating fish in their food that they consume. So when fully scaled up, this initiative has the potential to add almost 10,000 tons of fish to the national food system. One other is in Mozambique, the Artisanal Fisheries Promotion Project, which was implemented from 2011 to 2019, and it recorded 12% increase in production and commercial value of fisheries on a sustainable basis, increased incomes of artisanal fishing communities, and increase in asset ownership and the living conditions of project beneficiaries, improved household nutritional and food security from 25 to 33% from the baseline to project completion. So I think I'll stop there. I have a few other examples, but for the benefit of time, I'll stop there and maybe we can bring others when we have the question and answer. Over and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I'd love to pick your brain further about so many of these examples that you've shared with us in terms of making aquatic foods a more sort of central part of some of the interventions around nutrition, climate resilience and adaptation, and also really bringing that sort of low and income country sort of perspective into how we sort of shape the solutions. I think I would like to sort of open the floor to questions, and if I could invite all the panelists to sort of switch their cameras on and microphones and just sort of engage in a little bit of a dialogue. So we've heard, earlier in the piece today from Dr. Johnston, making this sort of argument for how we need to really look to make aquatic foods a more central sort of part of the global research agenda and the innovations to address some of these big sort of critical challenges that, face. And some of them, have been sort of even exacerbated even further by COVID-19 and then, the imminent kind of threat of climate change is there and present with all of us. So, what do we need to do, to sort of really shift the dial in this direction? I mean, we've heard from some of our partners working in the ground with us in terms of what they're doing, but what do we really need to do sort of to really get more people, more funders, more supporters to sort of help us along in this journey? Any takers?
Tana, I'm happy to speak to that. And I noticed I was looking through the Q&A, Lalita Bhattacharjee also asked about some of the environmental issues associated with aquatic food production, especially in aquaculture. And I think one of the things we need, and this is why getting the science and the research right is so important, we need to really be able to be serious about environmental stewardship at the same time as we intensify. And when I say intensify, I mean with knowledge, science, genetics, better practices, more efficient feeds, whatever it happens to be, but also water quality stewardship and management. So we need to make sure we're really walking the walk on environmental sustainability while we also achieve inclusive economic growth. And as we've heard, the opportunities for women, and I would add youth to that too, I think on these high value value chains are really formidable. So getting the science right is so critical because that can help us understand the trade-offs between environmental issues, climate footprint issues, and productivity and poverty reduction and nutrition gain opportunities associated with inclusive growth. So I welcome the fact that she raised this point, and I think it's one we have to keep squarely in view, and WorldFish and its research partners can help us make sure we do it right.
Thanks for that, Rob. Are there any views around the table?
Can I?
Yes, go ahead, Joyce.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Rob has said, and said very well, is also putting in place safeguards, because we have to look for a win-win. We talk about trade-offs, but we can also get a win-win. So we have good nutrition, and also we have climate adaptation mechanisms put in place. But then we need the data, we need the evidence, so that we can do the analysis and understand what are the possible trade-offs and what are the possible negative effects, so for us to achieve the win-win situation. So having those socio, environmental, and climate assessment procedures would really help us to take decisions on investment options, or whether it's adaptation activities that would make sure that we don't lose out on one, because we want a healthy planet, and also we want good nutrition for our people, and also safe and healthy and nutritious foods. So I think having that data and also building this into the policy system, so that it is really that we need to have that multi-sector approach, which looks not only at nutrition, but then nutrition and also the benefit for the climate and other sectors, would really help us to start looking at a holistic way of making sure that we don't drop the ball on any one aspect and win on the other.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a very good point. Are there any other views to this question?
No, I mean, I just wanted to maybe to as you say in my language, to throw the stick at the snake and wake it up a bit, and just be a little more, to push the envelope. You see, not too long ago, there's been the COP discussions, and I just wish we could stop paying lip service to climate and environment issues and really do what needs to be done. Because you see, the unfortunate part is that the poor countries are the ones that are bearing the most brunt of climate impacts. And we have more climate refugees and environmental refugees, environmental degradation refugees, than anybody even has taken the time to look into that. So to add on to what Rob said, if we can really make sure that, we have an integrated ecosystems approach, that would lead us to a better way of understanding. When we talk about climate, it is not just, the drylands, it is the waterways, it is everything that comes with, a holistic food systems approach. So I think we need to start, thinking outside the box a little bit and really being real about the issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Those of you who know Shakuntala, Dr. Tilsted's work, a little bit more closely, and actually also the reason why she's the World Food Prize laureate this year for her work at the intersection of nutrition, aquatic foods, gender, and so many other issues, know that, one of the things actually when I've sort of engaged in conversation and also trying to understand, how to talk about her work, because it's not something that, you can, it's not the kind of work that you can fit in a box. She always talks about how, when you apply this nutrition lens to food production, the research questions change, and also the way you look for solutions sort of change. And she kind of, uses the work that she did in India and Bangladesh and Cambodia and Malawi to sort of really sort of think, a little bit more sort of holistically about, some of these solutions. And again, the examples that we saw for like fish powder, chutneys, and how they've been integrated in the creating new products, using science to sort of develop those, working with policy and sort of knowledge engagement, and working with private sector with the policy environment and so forth. She always sort of talks about how important it is to really sort of shift that narrative. And when we sort of shifting that narrative and that kind of framing through the nutrition lens, everything sort of changes. So is it time, I guess, for us to sort of think differently and sort of in those terms, but also understand that, there's, when we're shifting that narrative through this particular nutritional lens, we're also looking to understand better the interlinkages of land and water system, and sort of connecting agricultural research agenda to not just land-based food production systems, but also those, aquatic food systems. And so is it time? I think that, this is, we did this.
I can chime in on that. Absolutely. I think it's, in some ways it has been happening, but probably too slowly. And I think, as Gareth noted at the very beginning, I think countries need to talk about a food system that nourishes populations, not just feeds them. And I think that conversation is happening. We could absolutely ramp it up. I also think that there are a lot of synergies, and this is, a lot of our work in working with country governments. Everyone is faced with multiple priorities. And there are a lot of synergies anchoring on nutrition goals with economic growth goals. We know that for nutrition, you want a diversified food system. You want aquaculture with vegetable farming. You want things that are integrated. And that is optimal from a dietary standpoint. As long as you also have markets in place and things like that, it's also optimal from an economic growth and income standpoint. And as we've talked about, there are just tons of synergies between nutrition and women's empowerment work as well. And so I also think that we should be putting that sort of nourishment front and center of the food system, and also addressing the fact that when we do that, it is much more optimal in terms of diversification over the long run for economic growth and also for resilience to climate change. And so I think that needs to be the narrative of the future.
Thanks, Laura. Are there any sort of other views around the table to this wider question? We are sort of pressed for time, so here's an opportunity for one more view from the panelists.
Okay. Can I come in?
Go for it, Anu.
Yeah. So I completely agree. Time has come. We really need to take it forward. I also feel, as a policymaker, that perhaps time has also come when we should gear the research to more implementation related issues as well, so that projects can be taken up, can be assessed, and we can understand what is working, what is not working, how it will work better. And so then I think the acceptability and will also improve. So that is policymakers' perspective. So I just thought I'd share with you.
Thank you so much, Anu. And actually, to sort of wrap things up for us today, I would like to invite Dr. Marco Ferroni, who is the chair of the CGIAR Systems Board and works to guide the sort of strategic direction of CGIAR towards its new and exciting mission to transform food, land, and water systems in order to eradicate global hunger and malnourishment in a climate crisis. In addition, he also provides consultation on agriculture, food systems, and sustainable productivity growth. Thank you so much for being with us today, Marco. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Agriculture, but not yet aquaculture, but that's coming. Tana, panelists, colleagues, audience, what a rich discussion. And it is an honor for me to be here with you in the company of our distinguished panelists and again, our audience. I'll try not so much to summarize because there isn't time for this, but rather to synthesize one or two key takeaway messages and frame them if I have time, but I know I won't in the context of the CGIAR research and innovation strategy. I note that Gareth has already referred to this very eloquently in his introduction, so I'll probably leave it at that. I do want to start with the observation that aquatic food systems are among the fastest growing food production sectors in the world. And aquatic foods, as we have heard, are rich in highly bioavailable expressions of essential micronutrients and other nutritional advantages that they convey. And they are a key answer to feeding the world, to employing people in production systems and local as well as more widely traded value chains that can be managed regeneratively if we do it right, while creating growth and development opportunities for millions. But while they are an answer, aquatic food systems, a very important answer, as we have heard very eloquently, every panelist has really spoken to this, to the challenges of feeding the world, they're also an underestimated answer. And I say underestimated, of course, because the notion of food security is in most people's minds more strongly associated with agriculture than it is associated with aquatic foods. And I think this is understandable. And I'm not going to suggest that we should divert attention away from agriculture, but I am going to say with the panelists that it is clear from our discussion today, from the pioneering work of this year's World Food Prize laureate, Dr. Tilsted, and frankly, from the pioneering work of WorldFish over the years, currently under Gareth's inspired leadership, that the time has come for us to explore much more systematically the scope of aquaculture, farmed fish, and aquatic food, not just for export to wealthy markets, but specifically, as has been mentioned by more than one panelist, for local production and consumption on terms and prices affordable to the undernourished and poor in systems that are sustainable. And I think, speaking of the undernourished and poor, it is clear that I'd like to highlight, as panelists have done, the great and clearly yet underachieved scope for enhanced gender equity and youth engagement in aquatic food operations, as mentioned again by the panelists, and also as shown in important research contributions by WorldFish. Gender inequity results in inefficient allocations of human resources, and it results in missed opportunities for innovation. And as such, while gender inequity is sometimes referred to as or viewed and conceptualized as a social problem, it clearly has enormous economic and wealth creation implications, as well as nutritional and health implications. Now, going forward, how to solidify and deepen and widen our engagement in relation to aquatic food systems? Well, we need research and innovation for it, both. Research to create relevant knowledge, innovation to work with this knowledge and put it to use in what I call innovation ecosystems that combine the contributions of different actors and partners to develop and take to market user-desired products, services, and solutions that improve lives. That's my understanding of innovation. And this concept of innovation is applicable to more reductionist, technology-driven approaches, as it is applicable to broader system-level approaches that look at aquatic food value chains, their connections to other components of food systems, be they land or water-based, as well as the broader institutional, regulatory, policy, and incentive climate in which the business of aquatic food production and trade takes place. Now, to me, the CGIAR research initiative on resilient aquatic food systems for healthy people and planet is a textbook example of attempted system-level innovation of this kind. The initiative's approach is holistic, as it should be, and several panelists have invoked the merits of a holistic approach. It is holistic in that it focuses on individual value chain components, in that it is looking at trade-offs, such as, for example, when the treatment of fish diseases can cause antimicrobial resistance that could threaten human health. What do you do then? It is holistic in looking at property rights and the question of aquatic commons, among a number of other aspects. And it is acting on a theory of change that purports to achieve two goals. And Gareth can correct me if I'm getting this wrong. The two goals are, first, ambitious, quantitatively defined aquatic food systems development objectives for, as I understand it, 11 target countries to 2030. And secondly, and maybe we need to make more of this in the text that I have just read earlier today of this particular initiative. Secondly, learnings and public good achievements and spillovers that would be applicable much more widely. So our discussion today has enriched my understanding of what is at stake in this endeavor. Thank you very much, panelists. Aquatic food systems are important for the many reasons that we have heard today. The opportunities are there, and therefore let us get to work with this. Thank you very much, and over to you, Tana.
Thank you so much, Marco, and all of the speakers for sharing your valuable insights and inputs in today's important topic on how we can help nourish people and the planet with sustainable, healthy, and aquatic foods. I also would like to thank all the participants for actively engaging with us today in this virtual dialogue. We hope you have been inspired and gained some useful knowledge that you can take away with you and apply in your own work, studies, research, advocacy, or business as it relates to the challenge and the task ahead of us of transforming food systems with aquatic foods. Before you go, we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter so that you can receive the event recordings and other post-event materials and resources that have been shared. Wishing you all a wonderful day or evening ahead. Thank you very much.